Hi everyone, my name's Emma. Welcome back to the Champions of Wonder podcast. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make with more intention will help us create the world that we want to live in. That's what we talk about here on this channel. How can we learn the lessons that life has to offer and apply them into our life to create the life that we want to live? The Netflix show called The One is based off of this idea that the one exists. Our soulmate is out there, and it is our soul's purpose to find them. That we are not going to be complete until we find this person, and once we meet them, we are going to feel as if we've known them our entire lives. This person is going to know how we're feeling and everything about us that is extremely important. And our first lesson is going to be talking about how can we deal with this narrative that is constantly being sold to us through TV, through shows, through weddings that we see, through the love that seems to exist in perpetuity and in perfection on social media? Well, the first breaking news is that the one does not exist. Well, not technically. The one does exist, but the one is yourself. The one person that is going to live with you for the rest of your days and is going to know you in all of your amazingness and wonderfulness is you. You are going to be with yourself for every single second of every single day for the rest of your life. And we need to create ourselves into the idealized version of whatever partner it is that we want. If we want somebody to come in and fix some part of ourselves or to complete us in any capacity, we are setting ourselves up for failure and that person. Because a person out there is never going to exist inside of a fantasy world where they're going to be perfect. And they are going to fail us. And we are undoubtedly failing ourselves when we put that kind of expectation on anyone, including ourselves. And when we do that, we strip both ourselves and the other person of the ability to make mistakes, to fail, to mess up, and that is a real issue. And we really need to take a step back and reevaluate our relationship with ourselves and to understand that we have many, many relationships in our lives, whether it be with other people, with romantic partners, with things that we do, with actions that we have, with emotions. All of these are different relationships that we engage with on a daily basis. And to put this pressure and value on one single relationship and say that this is the only one that matters is setting us all up for failure. And we can't do that anymore, not with the understanding that we want to create a better life for ourselves. We have to look into every single relationship we have, understand how they work, understand the issues, understand what works, what doesn't work, who works with us, who doesn't, what works. And based off of that, we can then proceed and move in a direction that is valuable, understanding, and create ourselves into this version of a soulmate. And then we can attract people into our lives as people and not as this expectation or this idolized version of a person who's going to fulfill us. We are the only ones who can ever completely understand how we've ever felt, how we've ever looked and viewed the world, how we've ever understood the world. And based off of that, we need to accept this idea that nobody else is going to be this person who is undoubtedly amazing and wonderful except yourself. And if that sounds very lonely, it's something that we need to work on. We need to dig into our relationships with everything that we do. Everything you interact with is something that you have a relationship with. Inanimate objects, animate objects, pets, animals in general, people in general, specific people. How do you deal with people you don't know? What are your relationships in all of these different accordances? And based off of that, you will learn a lot about yourself and you will start to see patterns. And when you go into your own past, when you go into realizing your connections with people who have come, who have gone, and people who are still there, you will realize that the world is a place that you can actually understand without having to feel like everything is so up in space and everything's out of your control. When you realize how you interact with the world, you start to realize what you expect from the world. And that is really powerful, and that is something that we can choose to do. And that brings me into another big thing, is that a big part of the show is this woman is going around the world and she's constantly putting on display that this match saved her life. That is the most important thing that she ever did, and she just wants people to be as happy as she is. And very quickly we learn that the person that she keeps parading on stage with her is not her actual match. It's not her actual the one. And because of that, we start to realize, and throughout the rest of the relationships within that show, we see that we can only really understand what somebody is telling us based off of what they're telling us. And because of that, we need to understand what somebody's actually saying. And most of the time when people are telling us things, they're trying to sell us a version of themselves as much as they're trying to sell themselves that version. And when we start to realize that people who consistently and constantly say the same thing over again, they're trying to convince you as much as they're trying to convince themselves. And we can take a step back and start to reevaluate what people are saying. And this really becomes possible when we take this pressure off of people to achieve, or we take off this lens that this person has to match up to these 1,000 ideals that I have for this perfect person, because you realize, well, no one's perfect. I'm just looking for somebody that's compatible with me, somebody that can contemplate and complement the way that I see the world and move through it. And when we start to look at people through the lens of this is the person that they are, with the understanding that this is it, I'm not going to capitalize on their potential. The person in front of me is the person that I'm going to be in whatever kind of relationship it is with, that I'm not going to expect them to change in any capacity, and they're not going to expect me to change, because I know who I am, I know where my values stand, I know which areas I need to work on, and they can either reciprocate, they can either reach out to you, or you can just keep the conversation there. And when we stop looking at people as these infallible creatures, we start to understand that they are human, they also make mistakes, and that we don't want to be around these people because we expect them to be something they're not, but we're around them because we want to genuinely understand more about them and the world and the way that they view the world. And if that's not why we're interacting with people, if there's some kind of expectation of, oh, they need to respond, or they need to do this, they need to be this way, that way, we're not taking into consideration what they're actually presenting to us through information that we can constantly get through the interactions that we have with someone. Very quickly, we can realize what actions are going to continue, what is just a front that they're putting up. But we have to allow ourselves to have that level of discernment when we're interacting with someone. We can't keep projecting what we expect somebody to be or imagine them to be something that they're not. We have to lay the cards on the table and evaluate from there. We cannot keep expecting somebody to be something they're not. And yes, we can only accept what the person says as the truth, because how can we really capitalize on anything other than what they're saying? But what they're saying can sometimes be often interpreted as the opposite, and that's difficult. But this will all become more obvious when we place all of the expectations off of others by understanding ourselves more. We really look to others to fill this sort of void in ourselves when we don't understand what void there is in ourselves, because we don't understand ourselves. So to fix that problem, we can start to understand ourselves more. And this projection is something that continues to happen throughout the show. There's multiple character relationships that project what they feel onto others and are constantly trying to convince everybody, including themselves, that the opposite is true, when it is very clear that it is not. And at the end of it, that's just not going to work. And another big part of this is that the truth ultimately wins. Throughout the entire show, there's this big case against the main character, and there is a few different agents that are working to try and solve the case. And at the end of the day, the people keep getting closer and closer to the truth, and the truth will always come out at the end. It will always be clear what the intentions were, what actually happened, what somebody actually meant when they said something. It will always become clear, and we have to believe it when it happens. We don't have to be burdened by our past, but we need to accept that our past is our past, and there's nothing that we can do to change it. There's no amount of begging or questioning or rethinking, overthinking, over talking about it that's ever going to change what happened. It happened, and you have to move forward, and you have to understand that whatever consequences come out of it, that you have to take responsibility for it. Sometimes we do things that we wish that we didn't, but the consequences of that action may still very well affect us, and it is up to us to deal with the responsibility of that. And we need to accept responsibility into our lives, and that no amount of money, no amount of crying, no amount of begging is ever going to help us run away from those consequences. We just have to face them and understand what's going on. And even if you would never make that same decision today, sometimes we just have to deal with those consequences. And it's not easy. And you're never going to know the full consequences of certain decisions until the decision is made. And if that affects certain things, we have to be able to continue to realign our projection, our path, and move accordingly and adjust accordingly. And until we learn how to do that and accept that change and path in our lives, we're just never going to be able to fully understand the point of life. You will make mistakes, and there will be consequences to those mistakes. But if we are willing to own up to it, if we're willing to accept that mistakes happen, that change happens, then we will be okay at the end of it. There is nothing that you can't come back from, and as long as there is life, there is hope. So the last point really is that the lesson through all of this is we have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable and not knowing. And that no matter how much we potentially knew about the future, it can't change anything right now. We have to understand that things have happened in the past, things are currently happening, and we can exert our powers over the choices we make and choose to make better ones, choose to be more conscious of the things that we decide. But at the end of the day, until you make a decision, you will not know the full depth of the consequences of that decision. And that's okay. And anything that is meant to be in your life, anything that is meant to be held on to, anything that is meant to be worthy of your time and effort and understanding will be there for you. It will not leave you. And if something that you were really passionate about or really interested in just ended up not working out, there's always something better on its way. If you believe that, if you work towards it, if you start to make choices that realign with the path that you actually want to be on. And that path is different for every single person. And sometimes you meet people and it's amazing, and then that's it. Sometimes you think you really, really want something and you get it and you realize this isn't actually what I want anymore. And at the end of the day, that's okay too. We're here to learn. We're here to make mistakes. We're here to find a path that works for us. But it won't happen if we sit back on the sidelines and just never try. If we're constantly contemplating and wondering and hoping instead of actually putting in the work and creating the action, making the choices and moving forward, we're never going to be able to fully accept the depth of life and the amazingness that responsibility comes with every choice that we make, every decision, every life choice. We need to understand that life is not simple, it's not straightforward, and there's no point that you're ever going to fully know, is this the exact right thing? And that is the best part, because it's in that journey that we've actually learned who we are. It's through making these choices, making these mistakes, feeling through our emotions, feeling what is going on, creating perspectives, understanding perspectives, that we start to visualize what is going on in the world and our place in it. As long as we keep being interested in the lessons that exist in what is going on in the world, is what is going on in our lives, in the lives of others, we'll start to feel better about our place in it and to move forward in it. And the thing is, we just need to move forward and keep going and keep accepting life as it comes and understand there's nothing you can do about the past. The future exists somewhere, but the only time that we can do anything is right now, in this moment, right here. And it's all a choice. It all starts with a choice. And lessons exist all around us. They exist in our Netflix shows, in our movies, in documentaries, and exist pretty much anywhere else that you look. Every interaction you have with a person, every time you talk to someone, every time you think about something, there's a lesson to be learned. And if things do keep popping up, we can wonder, hey, why does this keep coming up? What is there that I haven't dealt with that would help me move forward if I did? And to not be afraid of what is happening and to deal with it head on. A lot of the conflict in the show is created because people were trying to find the back exits, trying to find the roundabout way to get to an answer. And at the end of the day, that causes a lot of pain for everyone involved. There was one particular relationship in the show where there was so much self-inflicted pain because somebody believes that their husband was going to leave them if they ever found the one, and then it really precipitates from there. If we don't confront with how we're feeling about ourselves and the world and our place in it, we're going to drag a lot of people down with us and force other people into the same mindset that is not helpful to anybody involved. And we can't do that anymore. We really and truly need to take responsibility for our actions. And responsibility simply means the ability to respond. And we always have the power to choose to respond or choose not to, choose to move forward, choose to let go. And it's not fair to let somebody else have power over you because you're choosing not to take responsibility for your choices. Once we take responsibility, we will be able to feel the full depth of life. And a lot of the times within the show, people were avoiding responsibility, and eventually they had to take responsibility for it anyway after creating a huge problem that didn't even exist before. So I do want to leave off on this note of lessons exist wherever you look. And as long as you have this childlike wonder that brings you through this world, that keeps you interacting with this world, that keeps you interested in this world, you will be able to deal with life in the most meaningful ways. And that whatever happens has happened, and whatever will happen is up to you. And you can choose to let things go, you can choose to take responsibility, and you can choose to move forward. Because life is not going to be played on the sidelines. You have to be in the game. You have to be doing it, in the middle of it. And if we let other people decide, we will be playing a game that we don't want to, a game that doesn't serve us. And throughout the whole show, multiple people were dragged into things they didn't want to be a part of initially, and because they couldn't stand up and say no, they were in very deep trouble. Of course, oftentimes when we do say yes to things we don't want to, it's not that harsh of an outcome. But if hurting someone's feelings for a few minutes is the worst outcome versus you contemplating, overthinking, questioning for the next month or weeks or even longer, we have to choose ourselves and self-preservation when we can. And oftentimes self-preservation is the kindest thing that we can do for everyone involved. And that Netflix has many shows and lessons exist there, but also just everywhere that you look. Every conversation is a wonderful place to look for lessons. So I hope that you tune in next time where we're going to go into a documentary on Netflix, one that recently came out and took the world by storm, called Seaspiracy, and we're going to jump into that a little bit and how our actions regarding food really do affect the world and ourselves a great deal. But keep being a child of wonder, a champion of wonder, and move through this world with the understanding that it's okay that you don't know everything, that you aren't fully aware of all the chances that you could take and everything that you could possibly do in this world. Nobody does, and that's the beautiful part about life. We get to choose every single day of every single moment who we're going to be next time and who we're going to be in the long run. And I want you to know that life will keep getting better if that's what you choose. And the choice is always yours. Tune in next time. But until then, have an amazing day.